Okay, well, I have 1 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. My name's Rachel Massey. I'm the Executive Director of the UNO Alumni Association. Thank you all for tuning in and joining us as we continue our virtual Meet Us At series. Today's topic is sustainability, and with us we have two experts in the field, Adrian Zlatkis of Siemens and Kevin Fitzwilliam of Energy Smart. These two amazing colleagues are actually also the instructors for UNO's certificate in sustainability offered through our PACE area, and we're just really pleased that they've come to share their expertise and time with us today. So thank you very much, Kevin and Adrian. I'm going to turn it over to you in just a moment. As for the audience, if you have questions as we move through the presentation, please feel free to type them in our chat function, and the instructors will be taking a few pauses to answer the questions throughout the presentation, as well as saving a little time for that at the end. So again, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Kevin. Adrian, I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you. So like Rachel said, my name is Adrian Zlatkis. I work with Siemens, but I've also been teaching a course this year with Kevin. So this presentation today is going to be very similar to how we teach our class. I'm going to kind of start with some really big picture items, and then Kevin's going to sort of bring it back and talk about, personal sustainability as well. My presentation today is going to focus on what the UN Sustainability Development Goals are, and how you can apply that in your place of work, no matter where you work. So just again, a few little things that we're going to cover today. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, we call them SDGs, sort of the history of those, progress on them that they've made since 2015, since they went into place. Just sort of some high level, why do we need these goals? And then, the role of business, and then some recommendations for business leaders as well. Again, feel free to ask questions as we move along. So in 2015, the United Nations member states unanimously adopted what they call Agenda 2030. And it includes 17 sustainable development goals. And the goals focus on social issues such as poverty and education, environmental issues such as biodiversity, but they also target economic growth, reduced inequalities, and innovation as well. The goals are universal. They're meant to apply to all countries worldwide. And another innovation are the agenda's explicit expectations from various members to actively contribute to achieving these goals. States, but also civil organizations and businesses are absolutely incorporated as part of that. They realize that it's not just something that should be a governing body, that a lot of individuals and businesses, private industries should become involved. And many of these are new and now using sustainable development goals to design their policies within their companies and their organizations. So a lot of people, business leaders, and you probably are asking yourself, like, why, would I be doing this? Why, why is this something that a business would need to get involved with? And as there's a survey that the UN did that the business community actually thinks that it's really something governments should be taking on. But the UN has taken a very different approach to that, and it shows that businesses really are leading the change for this. And there's just a lot of opportunity, that for businesses to take this on, and certainly their importance in the world economy as well. Governments aren't in that business, and a lot of private companies really need to seize the market opportunities as they open up and advance progress on the global goals package. So 17 goals, a lot of different indicators and a lot of different individual items. If you're interested about any of these very specifically, we can certainly talk about those, but you can see, just overarching, this is the 17 areas that they're focusing on. So just a little history of how we got to where we are. In 1972, that's when the UN had their first summit where they got together and decided, they set the guidelines for governments and international organizations, and are they going to tackle global environmental, and it was only focused on the environment at that time. And then we moved into the late 1980s where we have the Brundtland Commission, which is basically what gave us the definition of sustainability that we use now. And then there was the Rio Earth Summit, followed by the Kyoto Protocol. I think many people are probably familiar with Kyoto. That's when they really started looking at the CO2 reductions, and a lot of changes were made, with aerosols and refrigerants and things like that. And then in 2000, they developed the Millennium Development Goals, which was meant to be 15-year goals. And at the end of that, we had the Paris Climate Accord, where we adopted the 2030 plan. So I just want to make it very clear, most people are familiar with the Paris Climate Accord and how the areas around CO2 reduction that has had a lot of controversy, certainly in this country recently. The Sustainable Development Goals are actually something separate that came out of that same conference. So, just to kind of keep that clear that these are not tied to that. It was something that was discussed at that conference, but it is a separate item. So some of the progress that we've made since 2015, the UN does publish an annual update. They just released in the last few weeks their 2020 update, and it really has some very interesting information in here because they talk about a lot of, where were we headed before COVID and how is COVID affecting a lot of these goals. So you can go through, it's a pretty long document that they go through, but they address every single one of the 17 goals and have a lot of information in there about how they get it. So we're going to start off with some of the bad, and then talk about some of the good. So, before COVID, one of the big goals is reducing poverty. So the way that the UN defines poverty, they call it extreme poverty, actually, which is when a person lives in less than $1.25 of US dollars a day. So less than $1.25, and the goal is to, eliminate that. They were making some really good progress, but even before COVID happened, our global economy started slowing down. So doing better, but certainly, not the significant improvements that we have been seeing. Some of the other things, this is related to the water goal. There's still billions with a B of people globally that don't have safe drinking water, and twice as many of those people that don't have access to manage sanitation. And that means, having a toilet that flushes and not having open waste. So still a lot of progress that needs to be made in those areas. And again, we were talking about this. So before COVID, the economic growth was already slowing down. So they measure it on a GDP, so gross domestic product per capita. So it was already slowing down before COVID, and now we're in potentially facing the worst economic recession since the Great Depression. So all of these things that we're sort of being bombarded with every day on the news, a lot of sad things, but still a lot of growth. And the fact that, these companies and the UN itself are really addressing these at a global perspective. They've developed a roadmap, and it's not all gloom and doom. That there's certainly ways that we can, get ourselves on a better track. So some of the good things, this is related to the marine life. One of the goals is specifically around oceans. And so the biodiversity areas that are protected have been increasing globally. There's a lot of, back and forth. It's really, we know where our geographic boundaries end, but there's a lot of ocean area that don't necessarily belong to a country. So there's been a lot of efforts on protecting those and those shared global resources. So a lot of these areas are being protected, and it continues to grow, and everybody feels like we're definitely on a good path for that. And then the global homicide rate is decreasing. It's slowly decreasing, but anytime we talk about things like this, those are huge numbers that are going down. So some of the good stories that are coming out of that. So why do we need the Sustainable Development Goals? These are some of the more, bigger picture global items. We talked about extreme poverty. There's still 1 billion people that live on less than $1.25 a day throughout the world. And 6 million children die annually before the age of 5 from preventable diseases. Something that the UN is very worried about because of the COVID crisis. A lot of children are missing their vaccinations. So, and that's including our country. These are not just, parts of the developing world. It's definitely something, that's here in our backyard. Over 1 billion people in the world don't have access to electricity. Obviously not a huge problem in this country, but still something, that is very real for us. And then something that, definitely hits more close to home for us is 1.3 billion tons of waste are produced globally each year, continues to go up. They think that that's going to be over 2 billion based on our consumption rate and our population growth by, unless in the next 100 years, they think that number is going to go up that much. And the US spends roughly $200 billion each year on solid waste management. So these are real dollars and cents items that we're talking about. As far as things go, there's a lot of other areas that we could focus on, the deaths from natural disasters, all of this. It's a lot of gloom and doom stuff. But, the idea is, that there's certainly a lot of room for improvement and things that affect us all in our daily lives. So, what is the role of a business in the Sustainable Development Goals? A lot of these things, when you first look at them on the surface, it seems like, these aren't things that you can have an impact on or even understand how this sort of translates to your day-to-day life. But no matter how large or small, or regardless of the industry you work in, all companies can contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals. While the scale and scope is unprecedented, certainly with what they're talking about, completely eliminating poverty and getting billions of people connected to electricity, the fundamental ways that businesses can contribute remain unchanged. The Compact asks companies to first do business responsibly and then pursue opportunities to solve some of these bigger societal problems. Global challenges, ranging from climate, water, and food crises to poverty and conflict and inequality are in need of solutions that the private sector can absolutely help deliver. The private sector represents a large and growing market for business innovation. And quite frankly, that's, as Americans, that's absolutely where the most of our innovation comes from, is from our private companies. We've all been very familiar with a lot of the pivots that companies have had to make, during this time. And certainly we've all heard about, car manufacturers starting to, generate ventilators and all the other wonderful things that they've done. So it's huge opportunity there. So for people to say, I don't understand how I can impact this, businesses absolutely can. And in the rush to transform business models and systems for the future, integrity and company corporate values have a huge role to play in that. For companies wanting to advance the Sustainable Development Goal agenda, the job starts by acting responsibly. The UN has outlined 10 principles for the UN Global Compact. If this is something your company is interested in, I would absolutely recommend that you check that out. And just as a layperson, and Kevin's certainly going to talk about this, there's a lot of things that consumers drive. We've seen a lot of that in our time, pre and post COVID, that consumers can really drive the directions that companies go in, and they have to answer to their shareholders as well. And understanding that good practices and innovation in one area cannot make up for harm in another. I think, somebody really said it well when they talked about, when we come out of this, we're really going to have to evaluate what it is that's important to us, and what we've decided how we're going to spend our money and how we're going to spend our resources moving forward. So some recommendations. This is just a really high level guide that's in here. Certainly there's a lot of information that comes after this, but the big thing to begin for business leaders is just building support, and that's not just within their own organizations, it's across the business community. There's a lot of really great examples of how one carpet manufacturer takes on something and it changed the whole industry. Same thing with auto manufacturing, any of these large ones, it only takes one company, and it can start with a small company. It doesn't have to be a very large, global company. And they really can, incite that innovation throughout their industry. And more leaders need to understand the needs for the Sustainable Development Goals. And the more that they do that, the faster the progress can be made. Regaining society's trust. That's something ever since the economic crisis and the bailouts of these large companies, and certainly now we're going through it again, businesses really need to understand that they are relying on us to, for our trust and our help during these times. And some of the big topics that have come up even today on the news, businesses should be paying taxes where they earn their revenue. They should be abiding by environmental and labor standards. They should respect the politics and the culture of where they operate. And that's, integrating social and environmental factors in their investment decisions. And, it engages them to be a partner in a world, that's more like what we're hoping for. And that includes, these companies working with governments, consumers, and society at large by adopting responsible and open policy advocacy. We've gotten a lot of negative attention for companies and how they've behaved and how they've chosen to respond to this pandemic. And, it goes much further than COVID, of how companies address this and sort of their reputation of how they are. And, we're really at a crossroads where companies can decide, are we going to take this harder road and do the right thing, or are we going to keep doing business the same way that we've always done it? And then also incorporating the Sustainable Development Goals into company strategy. I work for a very large global company, and it's absolutely something that's we're working on. And I think a lot of you would probably be surprised if you really look at your place of business and understanding that a lot of these companies have taken this on, but it's absolutely something that small businesses and medium-sized businesses can do as well. And it's applying sustainable development goals at the strategic levels. CEOs can create a lot of opportunity for businesses to grow in new markets that are successful and sustainable. Inspiring customers is one part of that, but also using the goals to guide leadership development, empowering women, and regulatory policy as well. And then driving the transformation to sustainable markets. Again, that's just working with stakeholders and governments and their own employees to do this. And so push for financial systems geared towards longer term sustainable investment. So what does that mean? It's certainly because of the world's uncertain circumstances. And again, this was a pre-COVID issue. Investors are looking for liquidity and short-term gains, but business leaders really need, to start bucking that trend and strengthening the flow of capital into sustainable investments and really planning for long-term growth and making sometimes the harder but better long-term decision. And then also finally working with policymakers to make sure that they pay the true cost of natural and human resources. Fair wages have gotten a lot of publicity lately and have been covered a lot in the press, but also paying, the true cost accounting for how much waste is and those natural resources, and working with those regulators to do that. So I think we have a question that just came in, but this is my contact information. Kevin, can you see the question? You're muted, Kevin. I'm sorry.
Yes, yeah, I just saw that I was muted, but I didn't see the question come in. Sorry about that.
I
don't know that.
No.
Or maybe we did have one come in. It just says, what is fair wage?
Fair wage. So, that's a fair living wage. And that means something very different depending on where somebody's located. The actual definition of that is just making sure that, a human can afford to cover their basic necessities for them. So it's not really a dollar amount, and it's located, it's certainly geographic specific, not only in this country, but across the world, and making sure that those employees are being paid in a way that they can, provide for themselves, housing, food, and all of those things. Okay, Kevin, I'm going to stop sharing. If anybody else has any other questions, we're going to certainly take some time at the end as well.
Thanks. So I'll go ahead and take over and jump in to my presentation. So first of all, thanks for UNO for setting this up for us. So my name is Kevin Fitzwilliam. My day job is that I work with the Energy Smart program, which is the energy efficiency incentive program through Entergy New Orleans. And I've been working with this program for a couple of years. My background has been in environmental, under the umbrella of sustainability and the environment for 15 years. I taught environmental science before moving into consulting in solar energy and LED lighting. So solar and energy efficiency, and then moved into working with Energy Smart. But aside from that, I also, if those of you who are living in New Orleans, or have been living in here for maybe anytime in the past 10 years or so, I was involved in starting Holly Grove Market and Farm, which was a big part of my life for a couple of years, and then also a radio show that was focused on sustainability that was on Saturday mornings. So this has been really just the heart of everything that I've been doing professionally and personally for many years. And I'm starting off here with a quote that we showed in our sustainability certificate class that Adrian mentioned, that her and I, and also Camille Pollan, who's the director of the City of New Orleans' energy efficiency program, co-taught over the past couple of months. But you can see there was a Harvard Business Review study that was done that shows that sustainability is more than just it's profitable. Frankly, it's something that businesses. This is just to piggyback off of what Adrian was talking about. One of the big questions about sustainability has always been, does it have to come at the expense of profit? And this study in particular did a pretty comprehensive review that showed that answer is no. And part of the reason is because there's both demand and support, the demand for it from customers, but also support within the business community, international business community as a whole. Now there are CEOs that have teamed up, and I can't even list how many organizations there are of CEO roundtables that have gotten together from international CEOs to figure out what do we actually have to do so that we're operating in a way that Adrian was just describing, where we are taking into account the local environment of where we're drawing our resources from, the politics, fair wages in those areas. So this is something that is really being incorporated. And hedge fund managers that handle trillions of dollars in assets are now talking about sustainability. So not just talking about it, but investing in it. When companies that are true to sustainability really dedicate to it, they find that it benefits their organization. So there's improved morale and motivation, which translates into reduced absenteeism within the company, increased productivity. So basically, two companies that are comparable, this Harvard Review study found that all things being compared, except for one of them being basically serious about sustainability, that company is going to be better positioned to succeed. It's similar to when I was selling solar panels for residences for a few years. One of the talking points that we had was, once you get those solar panels, all things comparable, one house with solar panel would have an increased property value of a few $1,000s, because when one house is saving $80 or $90 a month in their electric bill, obviously that's more attractive. In this case with businesses, employers are just motivated to work for a company that is doing the right thing with adopting environmental standards, and there was a 16% increase in productivity that this study found. So what I'm going to do is talk about tools. So what are the ways that you can actually support, if you want to support businesses who do care about sustainability, what are the ways that you can do that? Well, one of the ways is that you can look, as a consumer, you can look at labels. So, we may not have access to that CEO roundtable, but we, aside from voting in the ballot box, obviously you can vote with your wallet. One of the ways is to look for these labels. I'm not going to go into all these labels. I'll just touch on a couple of them. So first of all, a benefit corporation. Benefit corporation is a for-profit corporate entity that, in addition to profit, also takes society and the environment into consideration when making decisions. So benefit corporations allow directors to make decisions that aren't purely in the interest of profit. Kickstarter is an example. You can see here how they use their funds. So they're protected from lawsuits if any shareholder feels that the director is not making the proper decisions to maximize values for their shares. There is benefit corporation legislation in the majority of states in the country, and Louisiana is actually one of those states that has this. In addition to a benefit corporation, that is not to be confused with a B Corp. A B Corp is an organization that has successfully completed the certification that's put forth by a nonprofit called B Labs. But B Corps have really gained in popularity. This is only, I think, less than 10 years old. I think maybe 7, 8 years old or so. But these are for-profit organizations. They meet this nonprofit standards for social and environmental performance, accountability, and transparency. The B Corporation certification is a distinction for social responsibility, similar to how fair trade or organic would be a label for products and food. So if you're ever curious about it, for the B Corps, a lot of times I think about Patagonia as a B Corp, and REI, and so it's outdoors companies. But there are a lot of different B Corps. I actually worked for one here. The solar company that I was working for in New Orleans was one of Louisiana's only B Corps. If a company is going to attempt to become a B Corp, they answer a series of questions in these 4 categories, and they receive a score out of a total of 200 points on what's called the impact assessment. So let's just take a quick look at what some of those questions would be and how you form, or what your ranking would be as a B Corp. So companies are asked about, their work-life balance, in this case, vacation days and personal days. What is the company supporting the continuing education efforts of its employees? What about where your suppliers, how are you sourcing your products? So they're going to look into your supply chain. They're going to look at your energy use. So what percentage is coming from renewable energy? They look at energy efficiency. And at the end of the day, that you come up with a score. So here's a little bit of an older score from Patagonia, but you get the idea of where their score was. And so if you're interested in looking up B Corps, you can find, there's a directory. So feel free to look into Louisiana. Like I said, you're not going to find too many, but as you search around, you're going to find a lot throughout the rest of the country. So again, just to drive that home, Benefit Corp versus B Corp. This is just a good graphic emphasizing the similarities for the most part between the two. There is overlap. One is a certification, and the other is a legal incorporation, however. So Benefit Corp, legal incorporation, B Corp is a certification. So coming back to those tools, what about in our everyday products that we buy? Let's go into this first one on the top left. Let's just mention this Rainforest Alliance. So this is a certification that corporations to ensure that products that they source are done so sustainably for the good of the environment. They pay attention to where the products are coming from. The idea is to prevent the sale of illegally harvested timber at prices far below retail value. So if you ever wonder why certain products, if you're in, whether it's Whole Foods or other locations that you might be able to find products like this, that markup is basically what you're doing is saying, look, I'm supporting the idea behind this, that I'm making sure that all along that supply chain that there was sustainability that was incorporated. So here in this example with the Rainforest Alliance, just to give you an idea of the background, when we're talking about the sourcing of those products, in Guatemala, there is a Maya Biosphere Reserve of about 5 million acres. And there are about 9 local communities that have been given the right by the government of Guatemala to make a living from the forest, as long as they do so sustainably. This image really, or the reason why this is important, as you can see in this image, is this is a fire map of Guatemala's Biosphere Reserve during the 2017 dry season. The orange dots are sites where slash and burn forest fires were taking place. And the forest concessions of the Maya Biosphere Reserve, which are in green, have boasted a close to zero deforestation rate for the last 14 years, which is remarkable considering the fact that areas directly adjacent to the concessions were some of the highest rates of deforestation. So basically, instead of slash and burn, women that were associated with this certification were now able to harvest and sell palms that they grew for Palm Sunday church services, for example, and selling those into Canada and to the United States. They can take business planning classes, learning how to link up with other markets, how to obtain loans. And just to emphasize this, a study that was done by researchers from Stanford and Catholic University in Belgium found that in one province of Colombia where there were coffee farmers who were Rainforest Alliance certified, they found that they planted more trees on their farms compared to neighbors who were not certified. These farmers' children also studied long in school because they weren't having to work at an earlier age. So once you get into one certification, often one is tied into another. With Rainforest Alliance, when it comes to timber, they require that the timber is certified through the Forest Stewardship Council. And the farmers that are making concessions in this area are able to sell their wood directly to U.S. guitar makers, for example, which was one of the interesting aspects of that. So you can find these labels. So you just look for them on certain products. Mars is a big supporter of this. This is not foolproof, I will admit. You can look into this and say that a lot of times during the supply chain, like in this case, Mars with chocolate products, these are cocoa trees. There are a lot of gaps where people are trying to scam the system, but it's a constant battle between making sure that these certifications are trustworthy and making sure that the sources are coming from where we think they are. Another certification you can look for is Fair Trade. It's a third-party certification, a membership process that ensures that a business is meeting strict labor, environmental, and developmental standards internationally. So a critical part of what fair trade is about is the concepts of the premium, which the producers put forth towards building wells or working on going organic or healthcare or clean water. So it's not just a charity, it's just a different way of doing business, that there's a minimum that is set, there is a floor for the price of that product. You can look for, by the way, this is an example where Kit Kats in the UK are actually required to be fair trade certified. So Nestle is required to has different sourcing requirements depending on which country they're selling into. And you can see the difference there. Kit Kats in the US currently are not. And that was consumer driven in the UK. So this is an idea of why it's important to support fair trade, or if you do, knowing that your money is where it's going. Farmers from fair trade coffee farms are making five times the amount of farmers which are not in the same area. Also, there are other products that you can buy that are not just food. You can also buy items that are fair trade items. So footballs, volleyballs, soccer balls and volleyballs. So if you're associated with schools, that's something that you could look into. It could be a learning tool just in the classroom with one item, or you could consider that for all of your items for school teams or park leagues. Okay, so there's more than just looking for labels. Supporting local business is something that we really have to touch on when we're talking about sustainability, because one of the pillars is economic sustainability, social sustainability, and environmental sustainability. Those are the three pillars. So local businesses spend more money locally. This is always something important to remember. We do have a local organization called Stay Local that is always, that is our resource for local businesses. So the more times that a dollar is spent in our community, it circulates in the community, the faster it circulates, as opposed to money that's being spent with a chain restaurant, the easier it is for that money to circulate outside of the community. A classic example of this is the bookstore study. So in 2002, a study comparing the impact of proposed Borders book sales versus local bookstores in Austin, Texas. Researchers found that $100 spent at a Borders would circulate $13 in the local economy, while the same $100 spent at a local bookstore would generate $45 in the local community. All right, I'm going to finish with a handful of everyday tips that we can take advantage of in New Orleans. So these are just making sure that if you're not taking advantage of this here in the city, at least be aware of it. We do have a recycling drop-off every second and fourth Saturday in the month of the month that's on Elysian Fields, where you'd be surprised at the breadth of items that they will take. If you've got electronics and TVs, if you've got batteries, if you've got light bulbs, keyboards, anything associated with electronics, you can bring those on those days, second and fourth Saturday of every month, out by the Lowe's on Elysian Fields. This is an interesting, just one to keep an eye out on. This is 3 Tulane students, recent graduates, who are starting a glass, or it sounds like more like a nonprofit, but they have one glass pulverizing machine. Their plan is to raise money to buy multiple other ones. So this is, we can't currently recycle glass in our curbside recycling, but this is an option for you guys to look into. That is going to be an option for us to bring our glass to where it can be pulverized on site. Now, I have to talk about Energy Smart. This is the company that I work for in my day job. I would be remiss if I didn't cover one of the easiest ways to take into account sustainability in our city, which is for businesses and residences to reduce their electricity consumption. Energy Smart is the energy efficiency program that is mandated by the City Council that Entergy New Orleans needs to participate in. And so there are dollar values that are associated with basically everything that reduces electricity at a business. And that's something that I could help you with. And you see my email address there. Adrian with Siemens, her company participates in this program. So if any, what we call our trade allies, our contractors that work in energy efficiency, if they are reducing electricity at a hospital, a school, a diner, an office building, there are financial incentives that business owner can take advantage of. So if you know any business owner in the city of New Orleans, obviously this is something that can help them. It can help everyone, and I can just walk them through how to take advantage of that. If you live in New Orleans, if your residence is in Orleans Parish, there is a residential program to this where an energy auditor can come out, give you, you can frankly get some freebies, some lights and a power strip and things like that, faucet aerators, but you can also have an energy auditor come out and talk to you about what some other things you could basically give you suggestions on how to reduce electricity at your home, and talk to you about what some of the rebates are that are associated with those. So there can be some financial incentives on the residential side as well. So just go ahead and reach out to me if you have interest in that. Something to be aware of upcoming is Green Tech Month. This is the dates are not yet set, but if you are interested or know anyone else who is interested in pursuing or at least learning about careers in any of these fields, energy efficiency, solar, wind, this is going to be something that will be for the first time ever happening in New Orleans, where there will be a series of webinars that you're going to be able to tune into to learn from folks like Adrian and others who are already working in those fields. That can give you tips on how to enter into it. What are the certifications that you might need? What are the potential salary ranges? What are the job titles? What do I need to do? What are the traits of somebody professionally who succeeds in these fields? What do we have in Louisiana? And maybe what might I need to look elsewhere, or where's the potential? But if you're motivated to work in green tech, stay tuned on this. There will be announcements. This will be a partnership between Energy Smart with myself as the point of contact from our organization, also the U.S. Green Building Council and the Urban League. And then a couple more. The U.S. Green Building Council does have a Louisiana chapter, and this is something that most of us could benefit from, because one of the things that the U.S. Green Building Council for Louisiana, the Louisiana chapter does is manage the Green Schools Challenge, which when I was teaching environmental science, I was having my students participate in. And this is, as it reads, a competition to see which schools can be the greenest. And of course, this takes into account both energy efficiency and recycling and so many other things. So if you want to get your child's school, your nieces, nephews, anyone that you know connected to this, that's another thing you could reach out to me about. I'm not personally connected with this chapter, but I basically know everyone in that circle. Two more, I believe 2 or 3 more things. One is Grown Green. If you're interested, in the just the area of urban agriculture. This is one city organization to know about. This is how you could, if you're interested in purchasing or leasing an abandoned lot, in order to grow on that lot and be a part of the solution for growing produce in the city as opposed to having a blighted and vacant lots throughout the city, this would be the organization to look for that. And then I'm going to give shout outs to 4 local food producers or composters, 2 that you see here that you could feel free to reach out to. These are the Veggie Food Co-op in New Orleans East, which is an association of Vietnamese American food producers. And if you've never been to the Vietnamese farmers market on an early Saturday afternoon on Chef Mentor, I highly recommend it. It's an amazing cultural experience. It's just, you know, you get exposed to a lot of different food, a lot of hot plates, wonderful experience. On the right, Grant Estrade with his wife, Kate. This is an opportunity to support a wide range of local food producers in Louisiana and Mississippi through Kate and Grant's food system, which is called Local Cooling Farms. They also have their plant nursery where you can pick this produce and meat and locally pastured beef, pork, chicken up at their plant nursery in Metairie. Secondly, a local farmer that Adrian and I both know, Ann Sanamo with Tomat's Cajun Farm, great food producer who participates with the Crescent City Farmers Market. On the right-hand side, Schmelly's Dirt Farm. If you're interested in having your business compost in the city of New Orleans, this is a great company to reach out to, Nicola with Schmelly's, and that's schmellys.com. And then finally, let's touch on, before we just open it up, let's touch on Mardi Gras. I would be also remiss if I didn't mention my own company, that is atlasbeads.com. Obviously, most of us in New Orleans love Mardi Gras, but I don't know anyone who loves the waste. So I started a company that is basically in support of 2 nonprofits which employ women in Uganda who make recycled magazine paper necklaces, bracelets, and also Christmas ornaments and purses. This is one of the many solutions that exists for our waste issue associated with bra. There are many organizations. You can look up Grounds Crew as another one. There are recycling organizations, the Arc of Greater New Orleans, the Trash Formers, which I have marched in. But there are so many different solutions. If you're on the cusp, if this is something that interests you, all you need to do is reach out to me and we can have those conversations. If you want to be a part of the solution for what's happening with Mardi Gras, a lot of people are driven to maintain everything that we love about Mardi Gras, the partying, the costuming, the art, and just reducing the amount of waste, which is, by the way, preventing and discouraging a lot of people from coming into the city and spending their dollars in the cities because they don't want to be, they're disturbed by the amount of waste that we have. They love the celebration, but we need to make sure that they're still motivated to come in here and be tourists during our greatest celebration. Lastly, if you're interested in creating a culture of sustainability where you work, I'm gonna toss out one idea to you. That would be, this is taken from wellness, wellness, health and wellness for each month at an organization. This was a company, Global Star on the North Shore, that each month they do a different theme for health and wellness. Well, think about what you could do if you were interested in promoting sustainability at your organization, where each month you promoted a different theme within sustainability. This is going to be our recycling month. This is going to be our no plastic month. This is going to be our reusable cups month. The smallest indicators of change, the smallest habit changers can be a domino effect to some of the larger goals that you might want to implement where you work. Okay, and lastly, we've got a plug. Adrian and I teach our sustainability certificate class. Everything that we've talked about today is really just the tip of the iceberg for what we cover over 16 weeks in a class that we just finished. You can see that there is, we don't know that the dates that you see here are going to remain. We're in communication with UNO about that. But basically, whatever those dates are for our next certificate, if you're interested in being a part of this, during COVID time, it was on Wednesday nights through Zoom. Obviously, it would be in person if we're able to do that again. That would be preferable. But it's something to be aware of. Each week, we cover a different theme in sustainability with a real focus on practical tools that you can use in your home life and in your work life to make your homes and businesses more sustainable. So thank you, guys. I'm going to stop sharing, and we'll let our UNO administrators take back over, and we can take questions.
Hi. Okay, so we have had a few questions. I think Adrian got back to someone. But what is the difference in the profit margin between the two KitKat products, for example?
Well, I don't know what the difference is in the profit margin, but I can say on the retail price, typically all of those certified items are typically more expensive than an item that's not certified. And part of that goes into, remember, you're making that conscious decision to support higher wages. Similar how the folks who are supporting Atlas beads are making a conscious decision to support items that are handmade. So yeah, you will be paying a higher price. But as far as the profit margin, I'm not sure.
Okay. And then do you know on sort of our more local level, do you know anything that is being done on the UNO campuses specifically? And, what can we do to replicate those in, our neighborhoods?
So Kevin, I'll kind of jump in on that. So UNO is actually a customer that I deal with in my professional life. I deal with building automation systems. So they've made a huge commitment to that and certainly are doing a lot of energy efficiency. Recently did a huge lighting upgrade across campus. If some of you are on campus, you probably have noticed that. They've probably been in your spaces. And they also have a recycling initiative. You can read some about that. They have a sustainability group that's made up of some administration and faculty and students. And you can, quickly find that link if you just put in University of New Orleans sustainability. But, the question about how it can be replicated in the adjacent neighborhoods is absolutely applicable. Universities play a huge role in sustainability. They're like small cities themselves. And they really are thought to be leaders, just like businesses are, and really instituting change. So, there's a lot that can be done. And, if you have some very specific questions on that, you can reach out to Kevin or I about it. But, a lot of the push for sustainability at universities does come from the alumni groups. So if this is something that you're really interested about, I would encourage you to reach out and discuss that with them. I'll tell you, my alma mater for undergrad was Georgia Tech, and that sustainability movement was started by an alumni group. And has really blossomed from there. So absolutely, it's a really great question.
And I'll jump in and give props to UNO, specifically from Energy Smart. UNO has participated to such a level with Energy Smart that it was one of the few organizations that we've done a case study on. So major energy reductions happening on there.
Mm-hmm. Is that case study available somewhere?
I could follow that up with you, yeah.
Just curious.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions, anyone? Let's see. Make sure I didn't miss anything. I know someone online, Kevin, I know you sent me an email, but if you'd like to maybe address the solar panel thing.
Right. Sure. Someone asked a question about solar panels and basically, is it worth it? And so the answer is it always depends. The answer is
Residential, yeah, it was residential scale.
yeah, residential. The answer is it always depends, but it depends on what you consider, fair. But so 5 years ago, Louisiana ended its state tax credits for residential solar panels, but so back then I would have told you, oh, if you're not doing it, you're out of your mind, because the payback period could be as low as 4 years. And of course, that's the payback period. Your home would get an increased value. But now it's more in that 10 to 13 year range with the federal tax credits that are available. Prices of solar panels have come down in the past 5 years, which is great, and the equipment. But it really just depends if you're willing to, wait for a 12-year return on your investment. If you look at it, if you were to compare it to the stock market, it's still comparable, to what you would hope to get in the stock market over that same period, though, too, or better.
Mm-hmm.
And you can always get a quote from a reputable local solar contractor. I recommend Solar Alternatives for that.
Great. And Nancy is saying she'd like to see slides of local businesses. I guess, is that businesses with best practices, or I'm not sure, Nancy.
So for local businesses that are incorporating sustainability, there is an organization in New Orleans that basically is the clearinghouse for that, and that organization is called Life City. They do an award ceremony for each year to basically award businesses that have prioritized sustainability. That's the Love Your City award ceremony. But I don't, and you can visit their website. I don't know, aside from that there would be a list of businesses or a ranking of any sort like that. But Stay Local is always a good resource as well. First, if you want to support local businesses, Stay Local would be your place to go. I see a question: does Entergy have install a finance option for backup generator? I don't know.
Kevin works on the commercial side, so I don't think on the residential side that they have that. I think most of the incentives are around energy efficiency upgrades.
Oh, sure. Yeah. As far as Energy Smart goes, there's not any kind of incentives for generators. How many types of plastics are used in one container, such as the coffee creamer with the number 2 bottle? Man, this whole topic of plastics and the numbers, you got to be a chemist to know this. But Adrian, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. There's lots. There's only, even in one plastic container, there's only certain parts of it that are recyclable. So, you have to remove the cap because it's made out of a different type of plastic and it's not recyclable. And in the city of New Orleans, our recycling is only number 1s and number 2s. Other markets, much larger numbers that they recycle, but in New Orleans, it's only 1s and 2s. That's a very good question.
Another big part in New Orleans, I know during COVID this is completely different, but another big part of supporting sustainability is paying attention to which restaurants you're supporting. From the moment you walk in to if you're exiting with a styrofoam box, there are some clear indicators. It's kind of like going to a restaurant where the bathroom's dirty, kind of gives you an indication of what the kitchen might look like. Well, a lot of times you can go in, and some of the indicators of whether you're supporting a restaurant that's paying attention to sustainability is, am I leaving with a foam container that's wrapped in a plastic bag, which has plastic silverware? That's an indication of where are they sourcing their food from. Are they paying attention to who the farmers are, who the fishermen are? Are they paying attention to the things like the wages and everything else? So there are occasionally I write articles for the Lens that are on those topics. If you're interested in learning more about restaurants that are doing the right thing, you can search my name and the Lens, and you will find that article, along with some other things having to do with solar and sustainability in general. But that's another big thing to consider. There is a Green Restaurant Association that does national rankings, but restaurants have to pay for that. But you start kind of just getting to know these restaurants around the city that are paying attention to it. I feel like it's really important to support those restaurants, because that means that, again, that money is circulating in the community and our local farmers are being supported as well.
Someone had asked about capturing the links to the referenced organizations. I can collect those, and I'll be sending out a follow-up email to all participants, you know, with information, the contact information and things like that. So definitely be on the lookout for that. Are there any other questions? We've got a couple more minutes. Okay. Well, we can certainly wrap this up. We'd love to thank Kevin and Adrian for joining us today. This was so informative, and I know I personally learned a lot. So, so you're doing something great. And you know, just remind everyone, if you're interested in learning more, there is that certificate program available. I will include that in the follow-up email as well. Yeah, look for our next upcoming virtual Meet Us Ats. Next week we will have, oh, I'm sorry.
And Francine, I'm just going to say, because somebody asked about their certificate costs, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $750. I'm not sure exactly what it would be, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was for the first one.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Yes, I missed that. Sorry about that. And
a big part of that is the connections that you make. We have a lot of guests, and these are professional connections. If you are interested at all in incorporating this into your work life, you know, pretty much every class you're getting connected to somebody who's a mover and a shaker, either locally or regionally in sustainability. One of Adrian's guests was the person who started the sustainability certificate program with Harvard. I mean, we've got some pretty heavy hitters that are chemists that are guests, so that's one of the advantages.
That's great. Yes, I'll put that link again in the follow-up email, and the link to all the PACE certificates. The
certificate hours were from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m.
Yes, we will get the slides out to everyone. Anyway, again, thank you so much for joining. We really appreciate having everyone here. We hope you learned some good information. Next week, I think we have something on personal finance, and we also have another session with Chef Mark. So look for more information on that. And if you have any questions, please contact us at alumni@uno.edu. And again, thank you guys so much. We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you all. Thanks to the attendees and to the administrators. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Bye.